So I'll go ahead and introduce. We have Kelly and we have Eugene, who are our co-chairs. I'm gonna go ahead and officially kind of introduce yourselves.
What did I say about myself? Eugene Staccato, I've worked with Emily and she's appointed me to a number of things, to this, and I also sit on the CRC, the Charter Review Commission, with Chuck O'Neill, who's the two reps on that, and I'll talk about that at the end of this meeting a little bit. I've been an activist for decades in this community, and environmental and social, so still active.
That is not an accurate description. He does Sierra Club, trail maintenance, everything.
Digging up dinosaurs now too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do that
everything.
too. Swami zoology, I try to do,
yeah.
so,
Um,
and you do everything too.
no, I don't. I'm Dr. Kelly Summerat. I'm a co-chair of the D5 NAC Council. I'm also the vice chair for Save Orange County, which is a sustainable growth organization that Emily was actually one of the founders of in East Orange County. She's no longer there when she became commissioner, but I'm the vice chair there, and we try to advocate for community voice in terms of how their area is developed. I am a professor at UCF in tourism community development planning. I'm an economist by trade, and that's it.
Yeah.
Who are all these people? We never had any visitors come. Thank you for
You
coming.
need-
Right, I'm doing a better job promoting the meeting.
Oh, yeah, so we have- Okay, yeah,
So we'll just keep going down the line and then we'll move it all to you. Do we have a mic possibly, or? Well,
Oh, the-
I guess
these are functional.
we got these up here.
Yeah, these are, you know,
I don't think we have another mic. Nope. All right, well, we'll just move down the line and then we'll have you introduce yourselves. We just may not be able to hear you on the recording.
Hi, I'm Bob Olson. I'm just a member of the committee and live in Emily's district as such. I'm retired. I was a business consultant and an environmental gadfly. I follow Eugene around and his buddy to various meetings and Kelly to various meetings.
I'm Anna Pepper. I'm just a concerned community member. I'm a civil engineer by trade and do stormwater. But I just love the environment and want a safe natural Florida.
Good evening, Eric Rosh, relatively new to the committee, urban planner by trade. I just want to thank you guys for having me, so appreciate it.
Okay, so I'm gonna let you two take it over. We already sort of did the roll call, so if you want, you can get that one.
we ask for public comment.
So call it order.
Okay, so we're calling a call order at 7:17. The meeting. The first thing will be the public comment. I'd like to, if anyone wants to stand up and make some comments about and put it into the record for us to start talking about later on. If anyone want to get up and speak?
We just want to present from Ridgeville. We have sent a letter to Emily on dated March 28th in regards to the interest of wanting a community service bill at the community building in our area. We have our homeowners president has done some information regarding the census and population area, like Christmas, who has a center, only has a population of 1,310 with saturation of only 29 people per 45 square miles. In Ridgeville, we have a population of 7,910 people in a 23 square mile area, which is a saturation rate of 339 per square mile, and yet we do not have a community center of our own. We have a large growth that's been happening in obviously in the past 2-3 years, where it's been happening everywhere. We have the availability for land that has been given to us, which Phil said in the morning that and Helen to the due diligence to explain a little bit about what's available for us. We already have that available and in place, so we would like your help to see what you could do to get that moving for us, or what we have to do as an HOA or as Helen, you know, a little bit more about
If I may interject, Wedgefield is a community of 87 streets. Part of it is city, part of it is what we call the estate, where they have parcels, so they have acreage. They also have an area that is called the villages, that's condo. We have a lot of people there, and the only place we have to meet is in the restaurant or the golf club. They are still 7 days a week serving food and drinks. It is almost impossible and having a meeting, and it is embarrassing when you invite someone in as a speaker and they can't be heard because of all the noise of the normal people eating and drinking. We need something to help us. When Orange County came to Wedgefield to build a school, we thought, okay, they'll let us use the school. Can't do it. No, can't do that. But when they were buying the properties, they bought 2 parcels. Then they discovered one of the parcels was too small to build a school and sitting there dormant. Why can't Orange County utilize that particular piece of property and build us a small, and I'm not talking big like Pittsburgh, our youth Christmas, a small community center where our homeowners association, our garden club, our fire age clubs, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, everybody can have a meeting place. Neighborhood watch too. So that's what we were asking. Please, Emily, I got a copy of the letter I sent you in March. I'd like to give it to you again tonight, so you can maybe work with it and maybe even talk to the tomatoes to see what you get.
I did receive your letters,
Well,
and
I got no response.
you didn't get a response
I
from
got
that.
no,
Okay.
so that's why I brought another copy.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought she was responding to y'all. But, so I did do some research though on that. So we have community centers, which are centers that go into mostly low-income communities that provide Head Start and different social programs. And then we have recreation centers that is like, is more for Parks and Rec. So the difference between the two, just to give you examples, so Bithlo and Christmas are community centers. And then the Goldenrod Recreation Center or the Magic Gym is a recreation center. And so they both come from different fundings. The fundings for the community centers, which are low-income communities, are CDBG funding. And then the ones that are recreation centers come from parks, impact fees, and those types of funding. And so it depends on which type that you're asking for. I know we have a shortage on parks and recreation centers across the whole county. And so that's something that they've already done a study on, and they're looking on ways to expand that and have better coverage of both parks and recreation centers. As far as community centers, there's more, as they go into low income areas where those social services are needed, it depends on what the demographics of the area is.
May I interject? We have a park.
Mhm.
It's a piece of land with a baseball diamond and a parking lot that's so small, we can't have events there because they can't park. There's not enough people, enough places for people to park. What good is it?
Yeah, it's a county park. Yeah.
We have a park, I mean, with a baseball diamond. Big deal for 87 streets. We paid it, that we pay more taxes because of ranger drainage than any other area in the county. We also pay a high water bill because of our private watering. So, there are things out there that Wedgefield, we're paying for, but we're not getting anything. There are other places that are getting stuff,
So do,
but we feel like we've been left out.
yeah,
We believe that that's the place to help. And you can't expect a sign to golf course to do that.
No,
It's not their,
Is it-
that's their, that's in general.
is the baseball park contained by homes or is it potentially, is it totally,
In the park, it's all fenced off.
so is there opportunity to do something there if we,
I don't think
Approach.
there's enough room at the park.
The largest parking area is golf course, but that's why.
yeah,
Yeah, for two things, right?
is there any,
People do, they come together. We're just looking for that, a big where all of us can do a Easter party, a Christmas event, a farmer's market, whatever it is, any of our organizations do.
Yeah, what they need is like a meeting space.
so, what I'm thinking is like the school, Orange County Schools is not part of Orange County government. It's, if they bought the properties, right, we had to look at the properties, who owns the property. The school system owns the property. We really, as a county, I don't think we can just say, hey, do this. Because it's not, it's a separate, different form of, another separate branch of government, essentially, another government. The parks is something that might be, if there was space there, if there was an existence, something there that you could actually come to the Parks and Rec Department. And I'm on the board there too. So if you came to that and if we had the space, maybe we could do something there, because we own that property as a county. So we could maybe think about something there. If there was a small facility there, maybe we can expand it somewhat. I don't know.
The house.
Yeah,
And
Yeah, it's,
once again, if you built something where we have a park, there's no parking. So how can you have?
is there,
You
is,
can't have
is-
parking.
is there any Orange County property we own out there?
well, if the
Yeah.
school,
Across from the park. If there are any lots, there are any whatever there is.
That's Long Branch, isn't it? We're talking about Long Branch? That's,
he's your trails guy right here too.
Like right across the Chevron,
yeah,
that part, the walking path thing.
yeah. That's a conservation area, so they're not gonna entertain, that was bought with conservation green place monies. So, I mean, maybe the thing to do is talk to
The school
school
board,
board,
if
and
they have a property there.
if they have a substandard property that they're not working, maybe we can work an agreement that we can get the ownership or trade something and do,
Talking about that they out there is an ideal lot because it's centrally located between the estate and the city area.
roughly how big is it? Like 100 by 100 or something like that? How big of a piece of property?
So you like that for school.
That'd be
Oh,
fine.
so like an elementary school wasn't. They usually take about 12 to 16 acres for elementary.
Yeah,
So,
so it could be about.
yeah, so. But. Okay. well,
Yeah, but definitely,
okay.
so I've already started doing some research. He's on the Park and Recs Advisory Board, which is a perfect place to go. He could bring it up, the need there, and see if that is, we could go in that direction for, because there's two types of funding. So it
Mhm.
could be the Parks and Rec, or depending on like I said, the demographics of the area, if it qualifies for a community center.
Mhm.
So those two things have to be looked at.
Thank you.
So,
Give us contact with the Orange County School, who would be in charge of owning that property or whatever.
I think the funding mechanism is a place to start. If they
yeah.
can't get the money, then it's not even worth talking to the school
Yeah,
board.
so I mean,
So we have to figure out which funding mechanism it would fall under first.
if I get a card from someone, I'll contact someone from the organization for our next parks. We just had a parks, unfortunately, we just had one at Goldenrod. So we do the road show. This month we'll be back at Barnett Park, which is a good drive from here, which is on the west side where the parade grounds are. So.
Anyone else have any comments? We have a new person. If you want to introduce yourself? We're putting you on the spot.
You walk in, now you have to introduce yourself.
I,
Very good.
Thanks.
Okay.
Is there someone online?
Yeah, from Joy, presented some of his position. He's president of the Puerto Rican Bar Association of Florida, general counsel, and consultant with ideas for us. I find this when we see a Puerto Rico research on. Join,
No, we have, two council members on Zoom, Joe and. We have Joe and Heath, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do they have any questions or anything? Did they pose any questions? Okay,
Oh, did we get the speaker working or?
Yeah, it's supposed to be working. They're on mute right now.
Okay, so are they able to unmute? And test it out? We should be able to hear them.
Hello, this is Heath. Testing 1, 2, 3.
so we need to approve the minutes and get through that.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
I think they're able to hear that.
All right, we heard the chimes.
Testing
Chimes.
1, 2, 3.
Everyone-
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Okay, yeah. So, we're gonna move on to the approval of minutes. Has everyone reviewed the minutes? Did anyone have any changes? Make a motion to approve. Anyone? Second,
Motion to approve. Minutes from April,
October
October
19,
19th.
2022.
So
So,
moved, I'll second.
okay, so. And all approve, yay? Or nay, yay,
Yay.
aye,
Aye.
any against? So, okay, approved. All right, the agenda reports to the officers. Vision 2050, who's gonna present that one?
I can speak to it. We
Okay.
haven't really initiated that start group yet. Okay, so we have Vision 2050, which Orange County staff has been working on diligently. I believe they set up the meeting for 6 years, right? And then 18 months concentrated, I believe is what we heard at the meeting.
Oh. Oh, that's quite,
That was a test.
So Vision 2050 is essentially our new comprehensive land use plan for the county. Eric would be able to speak excellence to the plan.
you wanna talk to it?
Sure, yeah, I mean, I haven't been as engaged recently, and that's kind of part of the reason I wanted to come here tonight to, get some more information for myself as well, but the county's going through an effort, revisioning, all of the land use, transportation, mobility, the entire 1991 comprehensive plan document, and extending the horizon year out to 2050. Currently, I think it's like 2030, which is the long-term vision. So as part of that, I know there's a lot of public engagement that's going to be occurring. I've seen some emails come through, and I think there was a meeting close to my house, which I plan on attending. But I believe it was continued to July to allow for that public engagement to happen. So if you're interested in that, I think now it's probably a pretty good time to get plugged in. There's a lot of good resources online. But the document following, I can tell you that's 500 pages. So there's a lot in there, and I think it's an exciting project.
It's a little different philosophy, isn't it? It's more based on like a market concept of creating activity centers. And I guess for us, one that concerns is they're looking at making the grow as an activity center, which, for many of people who live out on the east side, that's a concern, because do we really want that type of activity east of the econ? And I personally would say no. So that's something that we have to be really vocal about when these meetings come about, and say, no, put the growth where the urbanism is now. Let's not try to keep spreading it out. So that's something that we have to be real concerned about. Some of those activity zones are interesting, some of them are big no's, and that's one of them.
And it's really, this is a plan that impacts all of us. So before I became involved with Save Orange County comprehensive land use plans, I would usually say they're mostly for the planning department to advise and guide in terms of growth and development. But in terms of like in the Vision 2050, essentially it's kind of incorporating both growth strategy along with lifestyle and what people would like to see within their area. And there are some very good things that are in the plan. I read all 500 pages now 2.5 times, so I'm almost done with the third time. But there's a lot of really good things in there, but there's a lot of disconnect as well that happens in between something that they're developing that's called Orange Code, which is like, I guess, a replacement to our Muni Code, right? So there's discrepancies between what's being defined in Orange Code and then how it's reflected in Vision 2050. And there's also some disconnects in terms, well, when we went to the public meeting, there's some disconnects in terms of actually financing the ability to do all that's in Vision 2050. There's no transportation plan that is available to look at the roads. We're in kind of have an issue with like approving developments that don't fully pay for themselves, and then the cost of the infrastructure that has to go in the area, which is a big concern to East Orange County residents, which is where, Wedge people live. I live, that was kind of in the vicinity, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Wait,
I'm on the edge, the urban edge.
Yeah, so anyway, so it's one of the things we're going to look at today is essentially, and if we need people to help because it is a big document, it's just to take a section of it and to really talk about, does this actually represent where you want to live in your community? One of the issues that happened is that during the data collection process for this, we were in a worldwide pandemic. So the opportunity for the public to participate then was primarily through electronic means, which is not necessarily always an equitable means of collecting data for people. Some people just don't do those meetings, and people don't have the ability to do the meetings. So we're trying to initiate community action. The problem is that the document is so mammoth that there's no bite-sized piece that you could give to somebody to read for them to even digest. So I don't know how the VCC is going to actually address that, or how planning will address that, but it's very difficult. And because it's such a large document, I'm a teacher, so I read. It's fine for me to read, but for somebody who's in their regular day-to-day operations, taking out a 500-page document with work, your job, your it's just not feasible.
Yeah, the other
So-
big concern I have about 2050 is we've been working on the comprehensive plan since 1988 in this county. So it's been developed over a period of 30+ years. How does this match up? Are we gaining? Are we losing? Are we forgetting? That kind of scares me. Whenever I see new things come out, I'm always worried. Did we leave something behind that was really good?
Or did
Accidentally.
we carry something forward that was really bad?
Yes, exactly. It could go either way. So not only is the 500 page, we have to actually know the sections that it's going to replace it with. So it's a task. It's a huge task, and we certainly need to do it because it's going to happen. I don't know how this is going to play into the whole stormwater issues too, because that's something else that we got, because the water things are changing, how we're approaching that.
Yeah, there's a section for stormwater in it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So that's in there too. And so I did pass around the paper with a lot of meetings that I'm scheduling. And some of those are on the topic of Vision 2050. So I have 4 of them that's going to happen throughout the district. But I really encourage you to go to every single one. I know it sounds like a lot, but it's the most important document in our county.
Mhm.
And so we really need people engaged in looking at it and really providing that feedback. And so at each of these 4 meetings, we're going to have staff there to explain it and also to hear from the people and what you're seeing, what needs to be fixed. So, and what I'm hoping, Kelly has some questions together that she'll share with you all, to share with other people and try to gather data. And what I'm hoping, let's say you go to the first meeting that I'm going to have out of the 4, you listen to staff, you take some time to look through the document yourself. At the second meeting, you come back and you're like, well, I saw this, this, and this, provide some more feedback. And then the third meeting, come back with some even more feedback. By the time we're at the 4th meeting, I'm hoping we have a lot of feedback gathered. And that way we have a good view of what needs to change, what needs to be fixed. I'm also, Kelly's a teacher or professor, sorry, professor. I'm an English major, so I'm used to reading a lot of documents as well, so this is something I can go through and digest, but it needs to be a document that I feel everyone could be able to read and digest and easily. So I feel like this 500-page document, if we could turn that into a 50-page document, if that's possible, I would prefer to see that, so reading through it, there's just seems to be a lot of things that are sort of repeated or ideas that are repeated that I feel could be condensed. So the more simple it is, the more simplified it is, I feel the better. And then you have the orange code, which is another, so Vision 2050 is like our goals and objectives of the counting of growth. And then we have the orange code, which are more of the technical side of it. And so once you have your goals and objectives, then the technical part of it are like rules that should, if you're developing something, these rules should apply so that you're in line with the goals and objectives. So that's why I don't feel like it needs to be 500 pages. I feel it could be more simplified. Eric, you're the professional here on that. What do you think?
Yeah, they definitely work together, the code and the comp plan. So Vision 2050, as you said, yeah, that absolutely 100%. It's the policy document that really guides where growth should go. And then the code comes in and actually has specific standards, the setbacks, height, all that stuff that really implements the vision of the community. So they work together. I think you gotta do both of them. And I think, I think that's kind of some of the feedback that the board gave staff at the last meeting. So,
So Eric, how would you recommend doing the bite-sized piece for people,
so it is split up into individual elements,
Yeah.
which would probably be a good start. I mean, a couple of them are really big, like, the land use element or whatever,
Mhm.
but, there's other really progressive elements in there that are, not common in other comp plans, optional elements.
Do you think there is a way to bring it down to a more tangible size for people to reference for the next 20 years or?
Well, there are state requirements, so you have to be consistent with statute, so there's stuff that has to be in there, there's just no other option. And then there are optional elements, which, that's where I think you have the idea, the more progressive ideas and things that are unique to Orange County that, could be celebrated a little bit more. So,
I just think we missed the celebration in 500 pages.
yeah, I know it's a lot and, I read comp plans all day for a living.
Yeah.
And, I can tell you that there are a lot of comp plans around the state that really need an update. And the fact that staff's taking the initiative to do it here is really good. And they've been hearing feedback from the board on individual cases forever. So, and I think a lot of that feedback's being baked into the plan, which I think is a positive thing. But in terms of how you actually break it down into something more simple, maybe there can be like some sort of analysis provided by the planning division that really boils down the big picture points, because you get lost in the minutia of all the individual policies. So, and I'm glad to help with that, like if I can.
So,
If Lauda has something.
Some comments and questions from Keith. Keith, are you, ask us if he's able to like
I read about 300 pages of that plan. It's very broad and all over the place. I feel like once it's implemented, I'm going to be living in a self-contained community. I won't need to go anywhere. And I know that's not the case. So I'm not going to be living in some hamlet isolated because I'll probably have to get to my job. But nonetheless, when I was reading that, I wanted to put it in some type of context, like, has it been done anywhere else? So I could go maybe visit that city and see what it's like, and, kind of go out there and beat the pavement a little bit. And then the other question is, what order are they going to implement this in? Because there's so many things going on. I just can't keep it straight. And I read a lot too, and I couldn't understand it.
Yeah, I think that was one of the issues with it that I found as well, is that you're jumping all around this entire 500-page document in order to get a cohesive understanding of it. And that's part of where I feel that could be simplified. And if we could condense it, then you're not jumping around so much. And I'll give one example. So there's an arts and culture section of the plan. And I feel like that section of it was put together by the Arts and Culture Advisory Board. And in that section is diversity, equity, and inclusion. But it's only referring to arts and culture. And I'm like, that should be its own section actually, and encompass the entire county and not just arts and culture. So, so there's like segments and bits and pieces that was just kind of like different people were working on, and it was just put together in one document.
And, further, oh, sorry.
Donna?
think another thing is not only writing, right, I'm a person that children have that. Also looking at language.
Yeah.
Like that. English.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
they actually sat for the Zoom meeting, and that was interesting. And it was also self-directing. However, my question was, it seemed like the people that were part of this Vision 2050 weren't even from here.
Oh,
They
no.
were not familiar with our community. They were outside planners that came in, that were hired to come in to develop this. Okay, when I asked questions about trees and our local animals and our gopher turtles and stuff, they thought I had 5 heads. They didn't even know what I was talking about. And I think that was a concern of mine, is that they're not even familiar with our waterways, our aquifers, our animals, our type of vegetation we have, our cypress trees, any of that. Like, so to me, I'm concerned that you've got these outside people from some city somewhere that says, oh, we are in urban planning, this is what we go to school for, and this is what we did, we're gonna put together this pretty thing, and we're gonna dump it in your community. And that concerned me. I felt that's exactly what they were doing. They were these upper level people that had this creative thought process of something utopia that went, but we're trying to dump it and sell the line of goods to our community and to our town to make it be, to create our location that we need. That concerned me. I just, like someone said online, show me where it's done somewhere else.
Yeah. I think that the people are from another state who did. It's a company. I mean, my general concern, and I'm actually developing something for the charter on this, is does this thing actually pan out to pay for itself? Meaning, for 45 years of my life, I've lived in this community, and I've seen development, and they are supposed to be, pay enough taxes to support themselves, and typically they don't. And what I sit back in fear of is eventually utility systems and other systems start breaking down as they're aging. Like where I live downtown, we had a pipe explode downtown. It was $30 million to replace that pipe. And we're putting out thousands of miles of pipe and down in Lake Nona, those areas. So my concern is we need to be looking at development and say, does this actually put enough money into the system to pay for not only the building of it, but the upkeep of it for the long term, especially as it ages in the next 50 to 75 years. Because once you build it, now you got to support it. They're tearing up clay pipes around my house right now, downtown, from the 1920s. So it does happen. So I think true cost accounting of our systems that we're putting in has to be part of this Vision 2050. Because if it shows that we're doing a development to the commissioners that it can't pay for itself, then it should not be allowed to happen.
Hey, Eugene, these things always show that they pay for themselves because they issue a bunch of bonds. And then they're going to pay for itself with all the more people they're going to move here.
True is that's always that's the win that they give us, but
Mm-hmm.
That's what they sell us, and it works every time.
my taxes do not pay for all the services that I get.
No, a perfect example of this is the grow that's in East Orange County, where what the cost was 550 million. Isn't it? For all the infrastructure going in,
400 million.
400 million.
I mean,
For 2,600 homes.
for a certain area, so it didn't expand to where all the impact would really happen.
Mhm.
So, I mean, if you did, it calculate for all the impact, it probably would be more than 400 million, but for the study area that they
Mhm.
did, it was about 400 million.
And the grow contributed 150 million.
Yeah.
So that means we're all on the hook to pay for that through our taxes. So,
And we don't actually, as much as we complain about our taxes, we're not collecting enough taxes actually to pay for everything in this state. So we're constantly in a deficiency of, and that's why we can't get community centers and parks and other things. Although I have to say, as a parks person, Orange County actually does a lot of good things. It's just we're highly restricted by the state of Florida. Because we're only allowed to tax certain things in this, and they restrict us how much we can do. So it really hurts the community when we can't actually collect enough income to actually build things that people want. So I really think that we need to provide something in the 2050, a mechanism to show what is the cost of these new developments and does it pay enough to actually warrant to build the development? And if not, then what can we do to make either the development pay for itself by doing something to it or not doing it?
Well, how much are we gonna finance? We need to know what component is financed.
Yes, I would actually like to hear from, Greg, is it?
Yeah,
Because I just found an example in Asheville, North Carolina, that they're starting to actually look at that in their land use planning. Is looking at the numbers and the calculation, is it gonna pay for itself?
that's an urban 3 group.
And I know Raleigh, because my brother-in-law actually lives in Raleigh, so we go there a lot, and they were doing a lot of development that were happening.
Absolutely. So I have yet to see a plan that pays for itself anywhere. State, back in my own county, we just finished this process. And one of the things that I learned sitting on the board is that you have all these different groups, including staff side, we're trying to make this document this big piece of the thing. And the challenge is, aside from the financing piece, and those questions are very important. First thing you have to do is convey what this thing is trying to do to the public. That's the whole point. So my first thought was, what is the comm staff doing to visualize this document in bites that are digestible so that everyone else out there can actually see it? But, whenever you're given a 500-page document that it's just kind of lumped in, I absolutely agree that it's probably various different advisory councils and groups that kind of wrote their own thing, kind of put it in. There needs to be a clearinghouse of senior staff or a dedicated board like you did. That needs to sift through all of that. All the details are important. You put those aside and focus on the big picture stuff. So you can't get to the details unless everyone understands the big picture. And I think that's the other thing is it's a living document. It's always going to be shifting and changing. The third and final piece that I experienced with some pain sometimes, even though you have this big document that guides growth and planning and execution, still only need 4 votes on that board of commissioners, so on an individual basis. So that'll always be the case. So we would have citizens who would come back and say, that document says this. Politics take that. So you have to be real enough. The politics will always be a role, but there are lots of layers. Yeah, so we thought, but this is my first meeting.
So Greg,
That to pay for this. So the more multi, apartment buildings and complexes that aren't actually property tax, will not know for any has never been perpetually paying.
so I think that the concerns of this need to be addressed and we need to bring it forward to the planning staff and say, look, what you got is okay, but are you doing this part? Are you doing the money part of it? Is it actually going to pay? You have all these gorgeous pictures. Is it going to actually pan out for us? That's something that we need to do. About the majority thing, that's something that might come up on the charter. I'm just saying that it might come up as a super majority that we might put to the charter question. And if we get it through our system, you guys will see it. So I could see us putting a charter question on that says something like future land use changes have to be a super majority. I could see that. I mean, anything that affects our community forever should be a super majority. Because it's going to affect our future generations who aren't in here yet. So it should at least be a super majority, not just a simple majority.
Is there a dollar limit where we say, we're done looking at the Vision 20?
Oh, the money that, where the finance or the money.
The budget.
So it's not about how much money we're paying the consultants, let's say for this plant, which it was a consultant from like Virginia or something like
Yeah,
that. And
it's
I had that discussion
Mid-Atlantic.
with her. I'm like, that's great that works over there, but it's not gonna work here. Had that conversation with her. But, we're talking about like and I just keep bringing up the grow, so the grow is 2,500 homes in a rural area that's being built in an area that does not have the infrastructure. In order for it to work, we have to build more infrastructure. Is this development going to pay for the initial cost of that infrastructure? And are the taxes from those new homeowners going to pay for the maintenance of that infrastructure? No, it doesn't.
No, I'm talking
yeah.
about we're paying.
Yeah,
Somebody did say, but I could pay it.
Yeah, well,
So
that's
I-
our
what
our
point
general
do we
taxes.
cut that off and say, we're not giving any more money to the architects, planners, those people.
Well, the consultants,
Yeah.
well, we're hoping to have a almost final, well, a complete draft by July 25th. So it came before the board and I was not happy with it. We had some citizens come and express their concerns and a lot more work needed to be done on it. It was not a package that I felt should have been before the board. It wasn't ready. And so at that point, the mayor heard all they did not have the votes to pass this. So he said that to staff, take this back, work with the commissioners and come back with something that they all can agree on, because I want a unanimous vote here. So we have until July 25th to get that done. Hopefully we make it.
Yeah,
So that's where we are with that. So
yeah,
that's why, that's why I'm having the 4 meetings throughout the district, trying to get everyone engaged, trying to get there to meet that July 25th deadline.
I come from, I guess, I'm a retired engineer, so I come from a pretty structured role. So the whole Vision 2050 didn't make sense to me because you have a comp plan that's an evolving document forever. And it was baseline back in 85, really, when we passed the growth management in the state of Florida. And that's where that document came from. I thought that that was a forever document. It just evolved with the evolution of our community. And I get upset when I see all that work just tossed out the window, because now, we got this 2050 from people I knew where I used to work. They typically did that because they didn't understand what was actually in the old document, so they wanted to create a new document that they understood. That's not the reason why you toss an old document, just because you don't understand it. You need to sit down, because there was tons of fights over the last 35 years and that went into that document. And now we're just tossing all those fights away, which has all learning experiences that went into that document. It has problems. It needs a change, but that's a living document. But you don't create, to me, you don't create a whole new document with a whole new set of potential issues that you don't know about when you have an existing document that might have some changes in there that needs to happen. But we know that document. From an engineering standpoint, you don't throw away your whole design just because you don't understand the design. You continue working with the design unless it's a totally flawed design. But typically, we've done somewhat okay in this community. We have our big issues, but we went from, when I moved here, I don't know how many of you all been here almost 50 years, and few of you have. East-West used to stop at Chickasaw with the blinking light. And State Road 50 only had one light when I was in high school. So it's changed. But
definitely the intention of the Vision 2050, I will say a little bit of background, the history of that. And Kelly was there, you were there, we were fighting the grow, which we keep bringing up as an example from probably 2010, I think, when they first actually started.
The Lake Picket text amendment
Well, it was for,
and
well,
and subsidy.
yeah, it was, but it actually started in 2010, because when I lived in Corner Lake Estates, because I lived in an HOA that was bordering where that is, and when I was on the board, that came up and we were like, no, and then they kept coming back in different forms and everything till when the final form of it. But then that was like 2013. When we organized, the organization that she said that I helped found, that was 2013 to 2016. We were fighting that. In 2016, then our commissioner wasn't listening to us. I decided to run for the position. When that happened, there was two sections, the south section got passed. The north section was being voted on between the election when I won and when I was getting sworn in. So I wasn't on the board yet. And after that whole thing happened, in that meeting right there, it was like to 2:30 in the morning, I don't know, over 150 speakers at the meeting, still to this day, record breaking. And after that, then it said, they voted no, one of the commissioners changed her vote. But after that, the mayor at that time, she was like, I don't want this to happen again. We don't want all this contention, in the community. That vote, was a 4-3 vote. So, you could see it was like split on the board too. So we needed something that brought everybody together and something that we moved forward in a way that was from the bottom up. It's what the people want their communities to look like. And so that's when Vision 2050, was under a different name though at that time, was started. So it's been, 6 years in the making since that time. But the intention is so that when we have this product finished, we hopefully don't have to amend it anymore. That's it. That's what the people said they wanted. What we got though at the board meeting wasn't that. It was what the consultant wanted. And it was what the county administrator explained to me. It was that, oh, we want to give you everything, all these different strategies. And I was like, no, that's what you're doing at the community meetings, giving the people all the strategies. And then by the time it gets to us, it's whittled down to the final product. So what we're getting isn't what we should be getting. And so now we got everything but the kitchen sink. And we have to now turn it into something that really is from the bottom up. And
It's not a
is
working
the
document.
final product.
It's not a working document. I mean, the comp plan is a working document. You can actually go look at the policy and look at the implementation language and get a good idea where you need to go with it. This is like,
It's all over the
it's a story, and it's a beautiful story. And
It's
doesn't really have
really,
a
we needed to be realistic. That was one of the comments from this council when we spoke in October about it. I mean, Bob, I don't know if it was you or it's in the minutes here, but someone was saying that it seems to be utopia, but we need it to be something that's actually achievable. Something that we can actually do.
I think you're referring to that Urban 3 up in Asheville. It's a group that's looking at, from a cost standpoint, on how you design a density or a city or a town to actually pay for itself. And that there's a whole movement in Asheville to be doing that. And Gordon, her P&Z is a big advocate, and he's educated me on that. So now I'm trying to take that data and start involving that into something I'm doing on the charter. So.
All right. Well, it's almost 8 o'clock, so we do have to move on to the next item. So we have LPN.
Okay.
So I know you all had worked with the Green Place. So the LPN is the north section of that one that was just told the story and it was voted down. Well, they keep coming back. So we had.
I had put in for Green Place to take a look at those properties. There's a couple parcels there that make up the Ribot Ranch, which is the North Lake Pickett area. EPD went out, looked at it ecologically. They all scored very well. So they're really nice. I don't know where they are in real estate.
So they made an offer. Well, they're trying to talk to them. They didn't do the appraisal, so they didn't make it like a financial offer, but they want to purchase the property.
Okay, so
But they are not at the moment a willing seller.
okay, we don't have willing. Okay. Now, on top of that, something that's going to happen in June in the CRC, Lee Constantine, who's the commissioner in Seminole County is coming to speak to us on the commission about what they've done in the urban service line to try to keep the east side rural and what the benefits have been to Seminole County. He's only speaking from the Seminole standpoint, of course. So that's gonna be very interesting to see what he has to say. And I'm hoping that spawns the charter and maybe some of the citizens who might come to that meeting, talk about the urban service line and try to come up with somehow protecting the east side.
And the west side.
And the west side. I'm sorry. Yeah, west.
The west side has rural areas too that also want.
Well,
protection.
I'm, okay, way on. You know,
East and west.
the east, west, I mean, there's urban inlets all around the county still. Northeast, west, east, south, but we gotta come up with some plan, and I'm not sure how to do it. So I'm sitting on the charter trying to figure out how do I draw a line. When I speak on the east side, at least I have a river. I don't, the west side it has Horizon West, down by the airport, there's a rural boundary, there's another place up towards Apopka. So we have these places that are defined to be rural, they're not, but they're being really impacted by development and a lot of pressure happening. And the grow is just a weaselly way of trying to get in there. It's just a low life way of doing, in my personal opinion.
You know, rural boundaries are also a cost saving mechanism for the entire county because,
The cost of running a rural place is much less than an urban area. There are costs because, you know, it's a longer distance to provide services, but the services that were traditionally were not hugely impactful to the total community. But since now we're providing urban services in the rural, you got more costs. We're also putting out a lot more traffic. You guys are already sitting on F-level roads. And I have no idea how you're gonna get around that because we don't have any other east-west corridors unless we go through the econ somehow. And we're gonna give one heck of a fight for that.
And Donna might be moving.
I mean, yeah, so,
Trying just to provide
mean, that's-
county
and-
for all my needs.
and there's a rumor out there that Deseret is looking at a sector plan. I'll put that out. There's something on, I've heard rumors about that now. So they're looking at doing some type of development on their property, so that's gonna put huge pressure, because their property starts there at 50.
Yeah.
And goes southward. So,
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing that I did that I know where from years ago was if they took the rural land and said the density factor was what they worked with, so that the lot had to be bigger. So every single person's lot had to be a third of a lot or bigger, which therefore discouraged some of the builders because they couldn't make it.
mhm.
So if you want to slow growth down, you gotta reduce the density and get some legal stuff in here that says you cannot go past this density. But if you're splitting up these lots to create such, these houses on top of one another, like Nona and everywhere else is ridiculous.
And some of the issues like on Lake Pickett, all those homes being out actually on the lake are on septic. And I don't know if they're in highly efficient nitrate reducing type second systems, or they are in traditional
they're traditional.
junk pits, you know, cesspools, essentially. Or, yeah. Because I mean, here we are and it drives, Gordon Spears is a great guy. He's on the P and Z. And it drives him crazy because we're approving all this new development on the east side on septic. Meanwhile, the county is paying millions of dollars to get the people on the Wekiva area off septic. So it's like, man, are we bipolar?
Alright, so LPN, I think could
Okay.
be, pushed into Vision 2050 and worked in with whatever is being done there. Cause the goal is to make sure that we have different types of living across the county. We have high urban densities where people don't want to have a car. They want to be able to walk and bike to their job, to their schools, stuff like that. They want it high density. And then other areas where, you know, we may have suburban, you know, where it's single family homes and that like Winter Park type of community that's been around for a long time, maybe wants to stay that way. They have the rural area where it's like one house per 10 acres and more like ranchettes. So, we need to make sure that is paying for itself and it's developed in a way that does pay for itself. If we're putting high density, it should be where we have mass transit, where we have jobs, where we have the services for it, so that everyone could be there and walk, bike, have that wonderful urban living that some people want and want to enjoy. So that's all through Vision 2050, and we'll get there in the next couple of months. Let's move on to just because we're short on
Okay,
time.
animal.
Services, we don't have Karen or Carolina here. So we'll skip over to stormwater. We do have at the next. Yeah, we have at the next two BCC meetings, the stormwater coming up. So I would love to have you come to the BCC meeting, provide comments, or even email me some comments and I could send that to staff as well if you can't make it. So,
When are the next two?
May 2nd, and then I believe the next
Some.
meeting after
6th.
that. So it's gonna be into two separate presentations to the board.
They've done a lot of work, the consulting people have done a lot of work on it. And I was looking at that in the sense of the bonding costs that's driving a lot of my clients nuts, because it used to be when they put a plan together, as such, the budget line for interest was zero, because effectively it was free money. It ain't no more. And it isn't going to be the way the Federal Reserve is going. So it has become a huge factor in any kind of thing you do. And the gentleman was talking about bonding. The county is butting up to its bonding limit as such. And also the costs are going to be the fact that they're going to have to start paying for any new money at a rate that they're paying a lot more than they are for old money. And it's going to continue that way. And a lot of these projects like Eugene is talking about and Kelly was talking about is what I see is developers are basically short-term people. They're not there for the long term. They're not there to see what happens to the development. And they make projections as such, but a lot of those projections fall apart and should fall apart on the basis of just engineering standards. You don't build septic systems in an urban environment, period. It's like buying a Tesla and then putting wagon wheels on it again. It doesn't make any sense. It's the technology that's driving some of this stuff. And we're sort of blinds. The developers are coming in and saying, oh no, we can get away with this and get away with. Yes, they can. But long term, all you had to do is watch the stormwater facilities as such that are not run by the county, that are run by the city. And you watch those things flood during the hurricanes. And it's a frightening concept to see, because they were smart enough to have the facilities contain all of that storm overflow stopped right at the plant facilities and didn't get out and biodegrade, in a biodegradable sense and such. But that doesn't stop the fact that the stormwater is going to be there and it's got to be dealt with. And FEMA is changing the stormwater from 100 years down to 225 years for some areas. Citizens is requiring flood insurance now, a lot of insurance companies. There's going to be a lot of surprises in these areas that I think, in what I was seeing in Vision 50, maybe the consultant wasn't dealing with the current reality, but if you don't deal with the current reality, then the plan just becomes a PR venture. And the current reality is that we're seeing not only everybody looks at hurricanes, but you can have just a basic 101 storm. It's like what happened, 2 days ago? No one was projecting hail, and they had hail in those thunderstorms that was incredibly property damaging to the fact. So these are surprises that you don't see for a week in advance, like a hurricane or something like that. And yet they're happening and they have a huge effect. It's going to have a huge effect on any kind of urban development, because urban development means flooding, because permeable land is gone And about some of the studies that I've read, about 30 to maybe even as much as 40% of the permeable land in Florida has been paved over, developed over, and can no longer absorb water runoffs that were commonplace and acceptable back in a period of time. Now we've got to get a man-made system, storm sewers, or floodplains, or whatever you want to call it. But that's got to be done, and it's got to be done, and it's going to be very expensive, and developers don't want to look at that cost. And it is a legitimate cost. Like I said, development doesn't come without a cost. It's like, what is it that comedian said? There is no free lunch, and there isn't a free lunch in development. Development costs down the road, and if you don't look at those costs, community centers, schools, roads, all the obvious things. But now we're looking at stormwater and sewers and all this other nasty stuff that we don't want to look at. And it's got to be paid for, and it's going to be more expensive than we have ever looked at in the last 10 years, 15 years, whatever it was. So because just if nothing else, the interest rates on funding money are going up dramatically as such, and for everything. So I guess that's my,
No,
yeah,
I mean, and it wasn't a hurricane.
no,
yeah, exactly.
We have to be prepared for that. And it's that the- if there's-
Mhm.
Yeah.
If everything's concrete and all you have is a townhouses and apartment buildings everywhere, there's nowhere for that water to go.
The Fort Lauderdale airport was very interesting because they wound up shutting that airport down because of the, not only the water in front of the terminal, which was on the news as such. And if you're idiot enough to drive through it, I guess, guess what happens to it. But they had to shut down the operations on the airport too, because the accumulation of water was so great. And the drainage that they had, because it's an old World War II airport, basically, and they had never really upgraded all the drainage. They said, whoops, now we've got a problem. So again, development is nice, but it does have long-term costs. And I didn't see that in this Vision 50
Mhm.
to look at what's relevant now. Like I said, again, buying a Tesla and putting
Yeah.
wagon wheels on it doesn't make sense.
I won't be around on Tuesday. I'll be up at an archaeological dig, but, paleontology. But what I took after Ian, I went and actually drove around the whole county the day after Ian in my little Civic. And I looked at Rouse Road, and I grew up in this area, so I knew Rouse Road, and Rouse flooded, as we all saw. But there's a story behind that, and I think I'm pretty close to correct on this. And the story is, back in the 50s, the Army or someone built that dam up by Blanchard Park. It changed the hydrology down below the dam. It changed the plant makeup. So in the late 80s, we had muck fires there. If anyone would remember the muck fires we had during the dry season. And so that area actually burned, and so at one point that was really wet, then it dried out, then it burned, then a developer came to develop that whole property down to close to the conservation area along the little econ there. And the thing that changed was the plants. The topography didn't change, so you still was a floodplain. And when it flooded, everyone freaked out. Oh my goodness, this is an insane thing. So my test is I went down to the new county park that we just bought down on the corner of McCulloch and Rouse. And I know that property well because I inspected that property before we bought it illegally. And I knew I'm good enough from an ecological standpoint. I can tell you where the wetland lines approximately are. It was well within its wetland during that flooding event. What happened on that, it didn't come downstream, it actually came upstream because the big boy on the block is the St. John's. It blocked the outflow for the basin. So all that water was backing up from the basin, just flooding slowly. So it just flooded that whole area. But the key point of that particular flooding event was it stayed within the flood boundary. So we have a problem still to this day for all those people who live in there. They're gonna flood again Because it did that back in the sixties too. Because back in 1960, I talked to some of the old timers. It flooded up the Florida Avenue in Oviedo. It did the same time this time. We had no people living on the econ back then, so I couldn't talk to anyone that still lived out that way, 30 years later. Then I went down to Lake Nona. I drove down the south side looking at that, and we had Chuck O'Neill has a lawsuit based on the rights of nature. I went and looked at that property, which I know well because I went to inspect it before they did what they did. And the thing that stunned me down there when I took the New Yorker reporter down there who wrote a nice article from the New Yorker was they actually added 5+ feet on top of scrub. And that really flaked me, I was like, why are you doing this? Why are you adding soil on top of scrub? There was scrub species at that 0 layer, and they put 5 feet of fill on top of it.
The scrub is like the oldest parts of Florida, like very,
Very dry, high, xeric situation. And that's, so what happened there is they nuked out the whole Cypress Dome and stuff, but they designed from good engineers, they designed structures that contain that water, moved it into nice controlled structures, then flowed it through some pseudo little wetlands, eventually into the natural system. So I followed the road down Moss Park, going down to Hanging Moss to Moss Park. What happened down there on the south side, down Lake Mary Jane, all the water sheet flow was coming down and it hit that road. And it actually, that road acted as a dam until it flowed over into Mary Jane. And I have video of this, of salamanders swimming across and getting killed, mud puppies, hundreds of them being killed on the road trying to swim across. I had fish swimming across Moss Park doing this, and this is a day after that event. I went and interviewed a few of the homeowners on Mary Jane, and what they told me was initially the flood came from Holland Ranch, if you're familiar with that area. It came from the east when the winds were blowing, so their homes initially got flooded that direction. Then Mary Jane came up. Now they were blaming it that the Mary Jane, the outflow was blocked or something. Well, what they did was the water managers, as a Florida Trail guy who works on the trails throughout the peninsula part of the state, they flooded Bull Creek. And it was underwater for about 5 months afterwards. They used it as a retention pond, the whole place, 30,000 acres. So they flooded the whole thing because they were trying to take pressure off of the St. John's, because 44 was underwater for weeks, and one lane was underwater for a number of months. So, and then I went over to Shingle Creek and looked at that property. I couldn't drive most of the place because there was signs saying you couldn't drive into the neighborhoods because they were flooded. But where the Shingle Creek actually flows, there's an elementary school, which is a South Florida water management canoe launch. And you normally have to walk about a quarter mile, half mile down to where the creek is. It was up on the school. That's how much I had flooded. And I was 3 feet above where the normal land is, and it was right there on the edge. So that whole area, and we're talking about development within the urban area and potentially impacting with some of the new rules that the county commission's looking at. And I've already talked to the commissioner in that district that I have a big concern that we have. If we're going to do development, I'm all for high density and infill, but you don't want to impact any more of the wetlands. You want to pull off and try to give as much. Basically, you're taking your bladder and stapling it down with staples, and you can't hold the water that well when your bladder's reduced. And that's what we've done to Mother Nature. So I have a real problem with stormwater engineering when we don't consider the way we treat water in we treat it as a square wave in engineering. It really is a parabolic. We gotta model it like a natural system, like a sponge, not if there's a dump the bucket when you get to one end in the bottom. And that's how their designs are now, and that's why we're getting these flood events. The econ use is going way up now after the flood. Oh, okay. One other thing, the econ had gone up over 26 feet and actually covered most of the Snow Hill Road. The only peak part of that road uncovered was actually the very peak of the road during the major part of the flood. We lost 2 of our bridges, which that's what I was doing today. I was helping rebuild another bridge that we're going to put out in the next few weeks on the Econ State Forest. So
Anna, I know this is your baby. Do you have anything you want to say?
That's my wine.
Well, since I haven't been to the other, it's been a while. I wasn't at the October meeting. And, I guess I hesitate to comment on the stormwater stuff because as an engineer, I want to review it. So I have some thoughts, but they're clearly based on incomplete information. So I need to,
We watch all now rise up into the state. So I can tell you, whoever designed our system of our canals and our waterways over there, they worked. And I started getting really concerned because I started seeing them, we have to grow hyper, we have certain regulations, and if they do, then they come back over and pour over, and we begin our land, our houses have to be on the road, and back that up, not back to the state. Yes, I know up front wasn't getting that one, but I can tell you, rain for drainage, fabulous stuff. And what they do, they were prepared, they already had lowered everything, made sure everything was completed, they knew it was coming, and I started getting there, my neighbor and I at midnight were looking at it, ready about to press, and by the next day, it was down, gone, and away.
well, one of the missing pieces that I really want to consider here is how the water management district's policies fit into the 2050. Because Florida's kind of unique that our water management district boundaries are really, they're based like they should be. They're based on hydrology. And they're broken up that way. So, there's no way around overlapping jurisdictions. When it comes to city, county, and state. So really, it's the water management district and the permitting process that is sort of that stopgap for designs that make sense. And that's where there's been the leadership within the water management districts. The appointments haven't
They're tainted.
they haven't always been scientists or engineers put in positions.
Let me do the non-political.
I'm struggling.
They're really bad people that are being appointed by the government. They're just plain simple bad people.
But
And
they haven't always been.
No.
So the thing is, it worked for you, but what's happened, there's been a breach of talent. And unfortunately, long after the developers have cashed their checks and whatever, what ends up happening is homes that should have never been there and people have built a life there. But the reality is, from a floodplain standpoint, they should have never been there. And it ends up trying to fix that stuff, ends up being on the county or city's tab. And this is years after the developers run away. So, I live in a community that was actually well planned as far as stormwater is concerned, and we're very appreciative of that.
But the problem I
But,
have with these
yeah.
well-planned designs is that water's still going somewhere. That water went someplace. Do you know where it went? I don't know. And that's the problem. The water is being channeled very quickly into places where no people live, maybe. Or they're poorer people typically. And that's what happens. We channel that water to the people that don't have as much money or to the natural systems that don't have any voice, although we tried to do that in Orange County.
Now they built all that street for all the right line and all the new roads and they didn't have the openings large enough for the water to go.
The St. John's, St. John's has a
That's where too, also in the 2050 plan, there needs to be green infrastructure requirements. Because there are ways to design stormwater systems that are more based in the natural hydrological cycle by distributing instead of a large retention basin, for instance, where they clear out all the trees and just stick a pipe in there. There's better ways to do it now. And especially when it comes to all that pavement, you interrupt all of that pavement with green infrastructure. And right now, it's been a challenge in Muni Code to get, instead of it being an option, to get it to be a requirement. And that's where, there's 13 municipalities within Orange County. And so, and there's unincorporated areas. So really what needs to happen is on a county level. And then there's other organizations like the Regional Planning Council where, especially when it comes to water, it absolutely ignores our little lines we draw on a map. It's going to go wherever it goes. So you need to have, even if Orange County has a great plan, there needs to be coordination with every aspect, on the border and in the region on a greater level. So the other thing, I haven't looked at this, but how this plan butts up to the other one, on a regional level beyond Orange County's boundaries, and the integration within the county between the municipalities, the unincorporated areas, how that, I don't know, MOUs and how all of that
Have you been,
that stuff I can't speak to.
yeah, have you been to the Regional Planning Council? I think I've seen you, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna be able to be at the next one, but, I did mention that one of the issues with the Econlocache River is it's flowing up to Seminole County. And they flooded a lot too. And then when it backed up with the St. John's, like it just backed up in Seminole County and then Orange County. And so whatever was happening further up, we didn't know what was happening. And so we really need, like you said, that coordination to keep the water somehow moving.
Well, and that's where like the green infrastructure that interrupts all that pavement. It's just like in a forest, the purpose of beaver dams, because essentially instead of having all of it, especially that sheet flow, not only the speed of it, but it needs to soak down and go down into the aquifer, not form a channel. I mean, how many billions of dollars did we just spend on the Kissimmee to fix our fix? We just we kind of need to work with nature. And I know like Army Corps of Engineers has engineering with nature, which is it's a decade-old incentive to basically do exactly that. But that's where too, as far as I don't know where this plan, how does it work with the feds? How does, or is it even considered? I haven't read it, so I can't speak to that, but
Those are good
I would
points.
like to.
Yeah. It's,
So
when we work on it, let's make sure we take that feedback and implement.
I have a lot of context, but I
There's
guess
nothing to stop the
speaking with
county from,
authority on a 500.
there's nothing to stop the county from,
I have a lot of questions, but not.
the thing about the county is it doesn't have to give away the right when annexation happens to the stormwater or the environmental side. Because none of the cities have the capacity to actually do the permitting, and that's why the developers do what they do. City of Orlando is incompetent when it comes to environmental permitting. Do they have an environmental, do they have a full department? No, so that's what they're clueless. So the county needs to stop giving away, and if we have to, we're fixing in the charter.
That
mean,
needs to be fixed in charter.
So if you guys want to put a charter amendment, I'll be the champion to catch it. Because we needed it, basically, it should be, it's called federalization of a county. That Miami-Dade did that, where they've taken in, okay, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to about where the water is going. And coming up with making sure that those usual funds.
Oh, yeah.
Don't end up. Or with low income areas. Who do them? But they don't have to stop it.
Or Eatonville, whose water is polluted. Yeah.
Right, historically, they were forced to live where they live.
Do you know, I just want to bring something up that sparked, there was a lady who was at the BCC hearing, and she came in and she was talking about that the plan does not represent equitable, I don't remember her exact words, but it was about equity, and she was saying,
Climate equity.
yeah, she was saying, for example, like, you don't, in the inner city where there are no trees, it's hot, but and that's where there are people with less income, but you're not doing, this plan doesn't represent providing, the trees in the area where we've got, climate happening, same thing with flooding, like, and it's impacting.
And a lot of those people can't afford air conditioning, so
Yeah.
when you go through there, because I live downtown. It's just, they got no
Exactly.
AC, they got the windows open when it's 98 degrees, trying to get a breeze in a heat island. Because west side of Paramore and West has nothing, I mean, it's terrible over there. And
Well, and that's where like some of there are green infrastructure solutions, which will actually address
Just-
not only as far as environmental justice, but for instance, in that scenario, one of the products out there, is a special kind of tree well where it facilitates not only the roots being able to grow without damaging the pavement, but it gives a place for all that water to go, and then you have a tree.
Mhm.
And it solves a whole bunch of
Well,
problems at once,
Mm.
and making those kind of solutions instead of an optional thing, requiring that before. any
simple
of these
design
developments.
difference, and it drives me crazy that we do this still in 2023. A parking lot goes in, so they put a big piece of blacktop on, and then they put the tree islands for these poor creatures to try to live in. But what do? They elevate them. They actually elevate the trees above, so now they have this little irrigation system that will break after a year, and these poor guys are trying to live in the middle of this asphalt farm. Instead of actually creating a slight slope down to this
that's
and
where the
actually
tree
sloping
well-
a tree well.
It's both.
So
you don't
all the
even
water
see it.
flows into there.
Yeah, it's like,
So it's
a container.
self-watering.
Yeah.
It's a self-water, and you actually take the water, and I don't know why we don't implement it as a code.
It's
It's
a
a-
product that has a cost and the developer just wants to pave over it,
It's,
and this.
it's
is where you
road,
have to
it's simple
insist
grading
on
these,
it.
I'm sorry. These things are computer aided tractors. The guy, you don't need a human to drive it. You just pre-program it and it carves out the land because they grade the whole thing. You grade it down to what you want it. I mean,
Well, there's some pavement solutions that are pervious,
yes, there are.
where, and those are options.
But
And then,
Is it more
like
expensive?
within my own industry, I mean, I'm glad to be here, but I have recognized since I graduated, I'm an anomaly. Because you know what? Big retention ponds and pipes are easy. Everybody else has done them. You just
I tell
do
you,
some grading, clear it all out, and it's easy. They can go home at 5 o'clock.
the civil engineers
so-
don't migrate too well.
So, I know that I'm kind of an atypical, my brain is not concrete. And there's the frustration in getting them to move. It's been a challenge but if I leave, then who's there? So,
The construction trades don't move fast because they get their tools. And they don't like to move from designs that they're
yeah.
comfortable with.
contractors, though, we're the ones who design the stuff. They don't go out there with their bulldozer and decide what to do themselves. So
Yeah,
the
that
thing
what
is,
happened.
Yeah, but
when it comes to engineering,
you got
we're
engineering,
providing the plan,
True.
and telling them what to do.
true, but
The
you also have to
engineers
work
need to
within the
make
bound of an
lead.
engineer. I was an engineer once. But you have to work within the bounds of your industry. You have contractors who know how to use pipes and they know how to use T-squares and speed squares and stuff like that. So to get them to move to the next level, you have to
Well-
design that and try to teach them.
Well, this
mean-
is a perfect opportunity with Vision 2050
Yeah.
to push that envelope and
Okay.
say, we're not gonna do it this way anymore. We're going to do it this way, based on research, based on data and history and everything that we've been at this at Orange County for how many years now? You see what works, what doesn't. There's new innovations out there. The county, Eric, You must be so happy you left.
So-
It's like,
I
no,
wouldn't say
but
that.
like, the county is like stuck.
Well,
It's
I mean,
stuck.
there-
So we need to move into the
So-
future.
Maybe,
Some of it is generation.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of those engineers with concrete brains, so they need to run out the clock. They got 18, 24, 36 months and they're gonna retire. They are not gonna learn anything new. They don't want to teach anything new.
That's why I miss Eric.
Well, and I'll just add, I mean, the county did a low impact development manual. And that's a document that exists, public document.
Yeah, but they haven't actually codified it
Correct.
in the Unicode.
Yeah, I
That's kind of
never
what-
seen that document.
That
not
is
a
the
requirement.
step. They
That's-
need to, it can't
So,
be a
There
suggestion.
was
It
a
needs to be a
pilot project.
requirement.
If you go to the Walmart in Hamlin, you can see a lot of those techniques that they did.
But-
They used it to reduce the size of their square pond, which gave them more developable acreage, which
Mhm.
ultimately was a benefit to the developer because they were able to squeeze another assisted living facility out there. And you can go out and see some of those techniques that actually work.
Why don't we use them?
I mean,
because you don't have to.
Boyd Development was the developer on that one, and, you know, they were pushed pretty hard. You know, they were asking for some flexibility and code requirements, things like that. The county came back and said, well, if you do all of these things, and low impact development was one of them. And we said, okay, and there were a lot of meetings to get to that point. It took forever, but yeah, there is at least one model of where that's been done.
Well, and another challenge is too, for those engineers with concrete brains. Okay, part of the problem is right down to education.
Yeah.
Because like at UCF, for instance, right now, if I wanted to take a class that had low impact development, wildlife crossings, green infrastructure, it's not even buried in the curriculum of another class. There's no under or graduate class I can take to learn it if I want to
That's not
It-
good.
at UCF. However, like UF, they have an entire program. They almost have a sub-college for sustainability.
Wow.
So it varies a lot. And the thing is, if the senior person doesn't know it, the incoming person doesn't know it, they end up repeating the same old mistakes. So
So what
I'm
I'm
not a
hearing,
professor yet.
so what I'm hearing from you is we need to have this in this 2050 plan. We need to have it actually in our plan to dictate it, so it forces them to go hire people to do this.
I've
some-
been chasing ABET to require it of all engineering schools.
I was about to
There's all
say,
kinds of things
yeah, it looks
outside
like we
this that
all-
I'm working on.
yeah, it also looks like we have to go to schools and
Yeah.
ask them to,
There's
teach
plenty
them.
of concrete grades right there in leadership at the College of Engineering.
But we
Well,
also,
it's transitions, we're in a real period of change because it takes a long time for what she's saying. And I saw some stuff in the county that as good as their storm management was, they wouldn't even talk to St. John's, and St. John's has some of the best talent in the state. And it's set up for that reason. It's just like she was saying, and yet here's a resource that is pick up the phone and it's not being used as such. And that's not, it's just a mindset, like she's saying, old white guys,
And like the Yarborough, and they know how to take the land and work with the water and understand how the water flows in order to let it to have that, to grow things and everything else. So if there's anyone that understands the why and how the water is important, it's our Farm Bureau, it's our, it's U.S. agricultural land that understands, because they've done it for generations.
Yeah, getting engineers to,
it sounds like we need to bone up the plan a lot, because
someone,
if-
Lada,
Yeah.
sorry, Lada has a comment.
If I could, for the last point, this was at 10 minutes ago. I just jumped in. We met, this year during, Brewery Living Contact, and mentioned state rolling out in Michigan. State is going to buy developments and rights to property owners. To this current point, we have to do with Florida water initiative, so thoughts. I don't know if you guys remember that.
but where we got flooding issues and they're gonna buy back the homes, or that's the question?
Yes, there's the
Yeah.
there is the Central Florida Water
Can
Initiative.
you read it? 'Cause the
Yeah, it
mic's
says,
not-
to the last point, we met with the Ag Commissioner during Puerto Rico Day in Tallahassee, and he mentioned rolling out an initiative where the state is going to buy developmental rights from property owners. To this current point, is the advisory working with the Central Florida Water Initiative? Central Florida Water Initiative is not mentioned at all in Vision 2015.
I'm not familiar with that group.
I'm not
Yeah, but
familiar.
I guess when it comes to private groups and stuff, until I've actually researched them, because there's a lot of groups that sound green and it's greenwashing. And they're just like the mouthpiece for a developer. And to just, I don't know about them. I think I have no
Mhm.
comment about them, but be careful by assuming by the name of a group, what its mission is and who's funding them.
Wasn't there something called Central Florida Water Initiative about 5, 6 years ago? Didn't we have something going on? There's a big something happening. They did a study. It was pre-pandemic, so it's just,
All right, so, sorry, we do have to
Okay.
move on. So stormwater, they're gonna talk in the next two BCD meetings. Please send comments or show up. New business, I would just like to have some D5 neck outings. I was calling them field trips before that, but then I thought that was a little immature, so I'm calling them outings instead of field trips. But it's, us as a group going out to different areas and learning some things about our district. And inviting some of the public to join us as well, so we could learn about different areas and things. D5 NEC volunteer days, but also like, if we have some time, we could do like a volunteer event, go out and, find some volunteer opportunities out there. There's a lot of different things in Orange County that we could do. Some quick announcements. I brought up language access, which someone brought, so I had brought that up to the board. And looking at a countywide administrative regulations to make it consistent around every division and department and office for language access. That's going to come back to the board in August. County budget, we're working on the budget right now, so we're gonna have some budget meetings coming up. We never have anyone from the public come to speak, so it'd be nice to, even if you just say, hey, we're here and paying attention, would be great. Because we never have anyone show up for the budget meeting.
what's the schedule like?
I don't know, it's on it's
So-
not on there. You have to go to the county website for those meetings. I don't have them unfortunately with me.
So something I'd like to see is, something from your office telling us what things that we need to make some noise about, because we don't know I don't know the details of all the budgets. So
Yeah.
if there's things, maybe we need to make noise and squeaky wheels do get greased.
Yeah, so I would say that the first two budget meetings are work sessions. And they are amazing. I love them. And whenever I'm hiring someone in my office, I have them watch them, the videos. Because you have every department and division coming and presenting on what they're doing for the next budget year and what they've done the previous budget year. So you learn so much about the county through those meetings. So it's a really good opportunity to learn. And yeah, so that's all we have. The next meeting is May 31st. We're still looking for a location for that meeting. I haven't found one yet. So, a meeting space is actually really hard to find in my district overall. So I know they wanted a community center in Wedgefield. I'll tell you, the struggle is real everywhere. So, so I'm still looking for a location for that one. Any other final comments or thoughts? I'm trying to book there. They close really early is sort of the problem. Yeah, with that location. Anyone, any last comments?
We need to recruit people for this council.
Go
So,
ahead. Lisa.
yes, no, don't you cover up. But, we need representation for, like on affordable housing, because so much of affordable housing is not even affordable. I mean, it's
No.
unbelievable.
Okay,
I bet
Well-
you could.
okay, well,
No,
Well, Eugene could talk forever.
I-
You see me here telling you, hold
We
on, let
always
some other
need-
people talk.
we always need an attorney's interpretation.
Yeah.
I know.
About affordable housing, that issue's already come up once on the CRC, so we're gonna address it. We have a pretty socially strong activist group on our charter administration group. And if you have ideals, you get 3 minutes, and if you really got a good idea, contact the staff and say, I'd like to make a pitch and try to get 5 or 10 minutes. If you got a good pitch, we're willing to hear from you.
That's the other thing that's not actually in Vision 2050 is the new state law pertaining to affordable housing. And it can't really, it was premature to even address it because we haven't seen that roll out yet, but that's not in there either.
Yeah. I got some radical ideas I can talk to you about affordable housing.
Greg, the LGBTQ community is under attack. We sure could use some representation.
You know, Eugene,
What about
the
this?
green infrastructure, this, you know how green infrastructure can extend the
I need to-
developer's dollars,
Please join us.
you know, when it comes, okay, well, that.
I know you're
same
busy.
principle
We're
applies
all-
to affordable housing.
Yeah,
I mean, the number of units per square acre that you can get and all of that,
Yeah.
all the green solutions
All makes it more livable, it makes,
Yes.
adds a bunch.
works for affordable housing. So the other thing is, that's another avenue to get it in.
I mean, we
is
could do it for the
to
charter, we could do it in
that-
2050, but we need to address it. I
Yeah.
mean, this is the time to do it too, because the next 4 months, 5 months for the charter is when we're gonna
the
be.
bigger we
doing
are, the more
initial
impact
stuff.
we can make.
See the study on that legislation that they passed? That it only affects 10% of the total of the thing of people with housing issues.
It's all
10%.
good
It's
crap.
it's all skewed to that group as such,
It,
because all of the
I watched the
minorities are never
disability
gonna vote.
stuff, they're doing the little paint of, oh, we're gonna help the disability community, and they put $5 towards it. It's like, no, you didn't.
No. it's
I mean,
not.
as a
It's-
family that
it's-
has some family members,
It's
we
totally,
could use some help.
there's no economics to it whatsoever. It's
No, they just
totally
want-
politically driven.
No, the state of Florida is doing a half-assed job on everything. We don't have enough officers in game and fish. We're lacking, we have 128 plus racks open right now for the state. Oh, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Sharon,
Second, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay,
Is there a requirement that?
We have yay.
Yeah.
Yay, yay.
yay.
We're done.